Have you ever thought about what you'd do if you discovered your lover was hiding anything significant? Imagine finding hundreds of love letters, but they were not for you. How would you react if every utterance exposed hidden secrets, deceit, and betrayal? In this video, I'll explain how I discovered the surprising truth, how the lies unraveled, and what happened when all was revealed. Buckle up because this story goes deeper than you might think. I'm a 40-year-old man who has been married to my 39-year-old wife for 10 years. We began dating 3 years before that, and we met at work. We had both long since moved on from that work, but it had brought us together, so it had a special place in our memories. We also had 2 gorgeous children, so things were constantly going nicely for me. It was the life I had always envisaged for myself at this age, and I couldn't help but be glad for it now. Unfortunately, I understood that wouldn't last forever. My wife is now my ex-wife, and I will tell you how it all happened. Since things were only resolved about a month ago, I believe I am in the correct frame to discuss them. To clarify one aspect of our past, when I first met my ex-wife at work, let's call her Angela in this story, she was seeing a guy named Vincent. He'd come into work every now and again to visit her, and as much as I despise this man's presence today, he's pretty attractive. I believe most women would find his face beautiful. I didn't have strong sentiments for him back then. I just accepted that he was indirectly related to our workplace. However, he and Angela eventually split up, and she was a complete wreck. She was unable to return to work for a week after the incident, and even when she did, she would occasionally cry. To be honest, it was exhausting, but I understood her situation. I discovered she and Vincent had been dating for 3 years, having met in college. He was supposed to be the perfect person for her. She would tell virtually anyone about him, not just because he was attractive, but also because he was artistic, writing songs for her and drawing pictures. That sentimental, romantic crap. I can't do it all. But I could tell when I liked her. I kept away from her because I didn't want to be a rebound. I wanted an actual relationship with her, not a fling or a connection she would regret later. I asked her out about a year after her split. Fortunately, she said yes, and I knew I'd do everything I could to treat her well. We married 3 years after meeting, and as joyful as I was that day, Angela felt like the proper lady for me. Vincent was rarely mentioned again. He came up a few times in the beginning, mostly when she told me about things he did that she didn't like, exposing his flaws rather than lamenting what she missed. Throughout our marriage, I truly believed she and Vincent had not communicated. She only admitted once that he had messaged her. I didn't have to confront her. She came up with it herself. This happened around 3 years ago, and she told me he stated he missed her. According to her, she never replied. Her being clean about it without my knowledge made me suspect she had not replied. This is where things began to go wrong. I'd been married to this woman for as long as I'd known her, and I felt she hadn't spoken to her cherished ex in years. In reality, it appeared that they had yet to be in touch since we became official. However, while she wasn't home, I discovered a small lockbox in the far back of her wardrobe. It was concealed beneath a bunch of shoes and clothes, so it seemed understandable that I had never seen it before. But it immediately caught my attention. I couldn't open it because it was locked and I couldn't find a key anywhere. I shook it around, and whatever was within was neither firm nor heavy. My first reaction was that it contained necessary paperwork, such as our children's birth certificates, to be kept safe from a fire. Even after I finished cleaning, I felt suspicious. My curiosity was so high that I determined I had to find out what was in it. I was not going to ask her directly. After all, the fact that I had no notion this lockbox existed didn't help my suspicions. Over the next week, I tried to figure out where the key was. When she returned home from work, I would rummage through her bag, think of areas I still needed to search, and watch for where the key could be. I decided that if I couldn't find it within 2 weeks, I'd approach her directly about the lockbox. That did not seem like an unusual question. We had been married long enough. The good news was that I found the key before the 2-week deadline. Because it was such a minor key, I felt silly when I learned it had been on her crucial ring the entire time. I carefully removed it from the rest of the bunch, and thankfully, she didn't notice it was missing. While she was at work the following day, I finally opened the lockbox. If you had given me 50 guesses, I would never have predicted what I found inside. I discovered a large stack of neatly folded papers, each approximately the same size and folded to nearly identical dimensions. As soon as I opened one, I realized it was a letter. The message, however, drove me mad, as did the person who delivered it. There were love letters from Vincent. If these were all his love letters, he must have written hundreds of them. I opened the first one 5 years ago, which got me going. Within 15 minutes, I had gone through all of them. I discovered that the oldest letter was from 7 years ago, and the most current was from only 3 weeks before. The letters were standard love letter content, with Vincent waxing poetic about how much he missed her, outlining what he was doing, and expressing how much better things would be with her around. Many letters included the phrase, "your previous letter," which was all I needed to know that she was replying to him as much as he was writing. Not that I needed confirmation, given that she preserved all of his letters, every single one. At that moment, some of her previous actions began to make sense. She usually always handled the mail first. She pretended that sorting through the mail was not a pain. Still, it soon became apparent that this routine allowed her to continue receiving letters from Vincent without my knowledge. She had managed to communicate with her ex without my awareness for 7 years of marriage. I couldn't endure reading the letters at that moment because he missed her, and she also missed him. He stated the last time they slept together in her unreadable comments, but I couldn't tell if it was before or after we met. It was challenging to comprehend all the specifics at the time because I could only see one side of the conversation. I eventually gave up reading everything and resolved to photograph as many letters as possible. I got to 103 before giving up, but it was apparent there were at least 100 more. I photographed the entire pile to illustrate that there were hundreds. After that, I folded everything back up, rearranged the letters in the lockbox, and returned it to where I had found it. When she returned that night, I gently placed the key back on her key ring. I knew I had to find out more. What I discovered was enough for me to want a divorce, and I was sure I would go through with it. However, I needed to learn more before making my decision. I wanted to know if they had seen each other or slept together during our time together. So I knew I'd have to examine her smartphone when I had the chance. The opportunity came the following day. I was pretty nervous because getting caught was the last thing I wanted. If I had been arrested, I knew I had enough proof to justify my conduct. Still, I wanted everything to go exactly as planned. After a long search across all of her messaging apps, I discovered that Telegram was her preferred method of communication with him. I had no idea she had a Telegram account, but because she had an Android device, she had concealed it from the app drawer, which explained why I hadn't noticed it. It only took me digging through the apps menu in her phone settings to find it. It also appeared that he was the only person she spoke with there. She did not want to get caught, so she loaded an utterly new app specifically for her infidelity. I taped her phone screen as I browsed through, and when I watched it later, I discovered that she had met up with him around 3 months prior. According to how things sounded, they had slept together. That was all that I needed to see. I stored the recording on my phone and returned her phone. Since I now knew everything I needed to know, I left Telegram open before locking her phone. I wanted her to see that the moment she unlocked her phone. I wanted her to have a strong hunch that I had seen it, but not to be specific. The following day, she acted strangely, but I did my best to appear normal. I knew she was racking her brain, trying to recall if she had left the app open before going to bed. Given how discreet she had to be, she undoubtedly questioned herself. Throughout the day, she would ask, "Are you okay, babe?" Even though I was convinced I was not providing any symptoms, I continued assuring her I was all right, and she gradually stopped asking before leaving for work. Oh, did I mention that she is a marriage counselor? That's the most ironic aspect of the entire affair. As soon as she departed, I drove the kids to school and then went straight to a divorce lawyer whom a friend had suggested. He appeared reasonably competent and had successfully guided my buddy through a difficult divorce, so I trusted him. I made sure to provide him with all of the proof I had, which made proving infidelity nearly too simple. He assured me I would not have to worry about alimony, the house, or the car. He stated that nothing was guaranteed, but relied on his knowledge to foresee how things would unfold. He acknowledged that obtaining full custody would be difficult because we might not be able to prove her adultery rendered her an unfit mother. Still, he pledged to do his best on my behalf. I paid the fee, and he promised to have the documents completed within a week. When it came time to serve her with the papers, I waited until we were alone at home. Our children spent the day with their cousins. I planned it that way because I knew exactly how I wanted it to play out. Her reaction was tremendous when I handed her the documents and she read them. She looked at me in complete disbelief, her mouth open and visibly perplexed. She had no idea why I was asking for a divorce. Everything seemed fine to her. She stammered, "What is going on?" After a long gap, I tried to determine whether I was serious. I told her she knew she hadn't been faithful to me, but she immediately denied it, too quickly. She claimed she had never played around, including kissing another man, and that it had always been and would always be me. At one point, I simply intervened and told her to stop. I urged her to look me in the eyes and admit she had not cheated on me with Vincent. Vincent, my ex, I haven't communicated with him in years. That's when I began laughing. I believe that's when she realized she'd been caught. She attempted to clarify or retract what she had said, but I couldn't listen. I spoke over her, telling her that I was aware she had lately seen and slept with him. She then changed the tale, claiming it was a one-time occurrence, a mistake, that she was weak, and so on, which was almost comical. I wasn't sure how often that happened, but at least she finally admitted it. With her back against the wall, she had no other option. I know about the love letters, too. She went silent. If someone ever looked like they'd seen a ghost, it was her right there. She was terrified, as if she had expected that a part of her life would always be hidden. But it had not.
"You've gone too far with your lies, Angela. We can't save this, so don't make it any harder." I recall her sinking to the floor and sobbing. I advised her to locate a place to stay the night and then left her there. Honestly, she looked so sad that I nearly felt sorry for her, but then I remembered what she had done and the hatred returned. When I returned to the living room, she had left and signed the divorce documents. I was just relieved she was making things easier. The most challenging aspect was picking up my children and coming up with a reason for why their mother was not at home. I knew explaining things to them would be the most challenging aspect of the entire process. Anyway, let's go on to the actual divorce proceedings. Fortunately for me, that portion went as smoothly as possible. My evidence was structured, and I had a lot of it. Fortunately, she had nothing against me. I had been a devoted, responsible, and caring father. She didn't want to drag things into the dirt and fabricate lies since she knew she couldn't win. At the end of the process, I could maintain the house and car without any alimony concerns, which was a massive win. There was a strong argument that I should be granted majority custody because my job allowed me to be home more frequently than hers. However, the judge ultimately decided on a 50-50 split because her affair did not interfere with her capacity to be a decent mother. It irritated me a lot, but I can't deny that it's true. She's been a terrific mother, which is part of why I loved her so much. However, I recognized I wasn't done since, even after the divorce, she continued to behave friendly with me, which irritated me greatly. I decided to make one final effort to humiliate her. If I had another chance, I might not have done this part, but now that it's completed, I'm okay with it. I went to her religious group's page. I'm an atheist and she's one of the women leaders there, and said that my wife had betrayed me during our 7-year marriage with her ex. I even used her name to clarify who I was talking about. I also commented on her business's Google evaluations, stating that she was the last person anybody should go to for marriage counseling. That examination continues to this day. She despises me for that decision. While we could have benefited from a cordial relationship for the sake of our children, I simply needed the gratification of hitting back at her in a way that did not include me cheating back. I have to say that the approach I picked provided me with that satisfaction. It generated a significant scandal in her church, and she is no longer one of the female leaders. She is now an ordinary congregation member alongside everyone else. I also know my exposure's impact on her business because she's repeatedly asked me to take it down. The moral of the story is simple. Be faithful. It is easy to do.
To be honest, I feel the most sorry for my children throughout this ordeal, but I simply hope they can grow up without this divorce having a long-term effect on them. There's nothing quite like concealing a lockbox full of what-ifs and the one that got away while posing as a marriage counselor. Meanwhile, she was still hosting her X-Files, quite the surprise. I would not want someone like her to counsel my marriage. She would undoubtedly tell me to go back to an ex. Broadcasting her betrayal to her church group and clients was a risky decision. Still, it certainly tested her expert advice to the limit. At the very least, she now understands that juggling exes while working in marriage counseling does not make sense. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching and sticking around until the finish. If you found this story interesting, please press the like button. Remember to subscribe and enable the notification bell so you can access all of our future uploads. Stay tuned for more news and features. Please share your ideas and experiences in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the following video.